Hollywood loves to sell us this romantic idea of the medieval assassin, right? A mysterious, hooded figure, silent as a ghost, leaping across rooftops under the moonlight. They're masters of stealth, armed with secret blades, part of a shadowy brotherhood. It's a thrilling fantasy, but the reality, the actual life of a hired killer in the Middle Ages, was anything but glamorous. It was a miserable, filthy, and terrifying existence. Forget the cool costumes and secret handshakes. Being a medieval assassin completely, and I mean completely, sucked. Let's start by shattering the biggest myth. There were no professional assassins' guilds. No hidden networks, no secret codes, no network of agents waiting to help you. Most so-called assassins were just desperate people. They were often soldiers with nowhere to go, criminals looking for a score, or peasants pushed to the edge by poverty. They weren't trained in some ancient art. They were manipulated by nobles, merchants, or even clergy who wanted a problem solved without getting their own hands dirty. The job itself was a horrifying gamble. Law enforcement was primitive, but punishments were designed to be public spectacles of pure terror. If you were caught, you weren't just going to jail. You'd be tortured, put on public display, and then executed in the most brutal way imaginable as a warning to everyone else. And for what? The pay was terrible. You might get a few old coins, a favor that would never be honored, or a promise that vanished the moment the target was dead. The training wasn't cinematic either. There were no secret schools teaching elegant combat techniques. Most assassins learned their skills on the streets. They knew how to pick pockets, how to sneak through a crowded market without being noticed, how to watch guard patrols and predict their routes. Their expertise wasn't in sword fighting. It was in understanding human behavior, because survival depended on knowing how people think and move. Even their tools were pathetic. We imagined perfectly balanced, hidden daggers. The reality was more likely a rusted knife, a clumsy blade, or just a simple groat made from a piece of rope. Poisons. They were a nightmare. They were expensive, unreliable, and just as likely to kill the user as the target. Medieval knowledge of toxins was a chaotic mess of folk superstition, risky herbal experiments, and half-baked alchemy. And planning a hit, forget it. Medieval towns weren't designed for stealth. The streets were narrow, muddy, and loud. The walls were thin, floors creaked, and every tavern was smoky and packed with people who would instantly notice a stranger. In small communities, where everyone knew everyone else, an outsider asking too many questions was a massive red flag. An assassin had to blend in, pretending to be a laborer, a beggar, or a traveler. But even that was hard. Long-distance travel was rare, so a new face was already suspicious. You had to rely on rumor, instinct, and pure luck more than any solid intelligence. For all this risk, the lifestyle was abysmal. Most medieval assassins lived constantly on the move, wandering from town to town without a home or family. They slept in cold barns, abandoned sheds, or just out in the open, always ready to run at the slightest sign of danger. They were perpetually afraid of being recognized by someone who'd heard a whisper of their past. Even eating was a daily struggle. Money was scarce, and food was expensive. It's hard to maintain the physical strength needed for this kind of work when you risk spending most of your days hungry. Blades get stuck in bone. Victims fight back. Getting blood out of clothes without modern cleaning supplies is nearly impossible. And medieval justice was swift and brutal. Just being seen near the crime could get you executed without a trial. And that fantasy of assassins leaping from rooftops. Most medieval buildings were only 2 stories high and poorly constructed. Trying to climb one was just as likely to end with you falling to your death as it was to get you inside. Running across a tiled roof would make enough noise to wake up the entire neighborhood. Hiding in the sewers, where they even existed, they were foul, disease-ridden pits filled with waste and rats. No sane person would go in there. Nighttime wasn't a cloak of invisibility. It was just pitch-black darkness. No streetlights, no electric glow from windows. You navigated by moonlight or pure guesswork. You could easily get lost, trip and injure yourself, or startle a dog whose barking would alert everyone. Even trying to predict a target's routine was a mess. Medieval schedules depended on sunlight and weather, not clocks. Medieval schedules depended on sunlight and weather, not clocks. A nobleman might decide to stay home. A guard might wander off for a drink. This forced assassins into long, cold nights of waiting, exposed and vulnerable, just praying they weren't seen. Medieval schedules depended on sunlight and weather, not clocks. A nobleman might decide to stay home. A guard might wander off for a drink. This forced assassins into long, cold nights of waiting, exposed and vulnerable, just praying they weren't seen. If the job was inside a castle, the difficulty skyrocketed. Castles were fortresses, designed specifically to keep people out. They were filled with guards who had nothing better to do than watch, patrol, and gossip about anything out of the ordinary. Even the servants knew who belonged and who didn't. Infiltrating a castle required a level of disguise, bribery, or inside help that was incredibly risky. Any one of those people could betray you at any moment. And if you somehow survived long enough to build a reputation, that was a death sentence. A famous assassin was a hunted one. You'd be blamed for every political murder, used as a scapegoat by powerful people who needed a convenient villain. There was no long-term future, no retirement plan, no safe haven. As you grew older, slower, or got injured, you became useless. Most died alone, broke, or were executed for a crime they didn't even commit. The life of a medieval assassin wasn't an adventure. It was defined by exhaustion, fear, hunger, and the constant, crushing awareness of how fragile their existence was. They weren't legends. They were ghosts trapped by circumstance, struggling to survive one more day. Their story is a harsh reminder that surviving the Middle Ages was tough enough for anyone, but for those who lived by the blade, it was a grim, lonely, and thankless gamble that almost never paid off. Thanks for watching. If you found this dive into the dark side of history interesting, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell for more. See you next time.